Diggity Dan. This is Wassup Flobo After Hours, the award-winning late-night program on that YouTube and everything. Look, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, and on Twitch. And for some reason, we survived the Facebook blackout. So thank you so much. And, well, if you're on that Twitch, hit me with a follow. I got a very special guest for you. Before I do, got to give a shout out to the boisterous crew. That's what we call our Patreon subscribers, the ones that make this show a possibility, to make the show a reality. So I have to give a shout out to Christopher C, Chrissy H, ACH, Edric P, Oliver E, Princess Leia, Matthew C, John W, Richard R, and Lindsay U. You guys are amazing, and I thank you, and you are what makes me go. Everyone's piling in the chat right now, but let's get right to it. Let's get to the main event, because I guess it's a week backstage, and this guy is all over the internet. You can call him an actor, you can call him a comedian, you can call him a Forbes.com contributor, and a fan of the professional wrestling arts and sciences. Give it up for Alfred Konuwa.
Yes, I love that. I love that intro. What a great intro. You nailed the last name. Let me tell you, it just rolled right out the tongue, and that's very hard to do. You made it look easy.
I was scared. I was like, this guy going to drop off my show if I butcher his name, man. That's
yeah. I was going to call my African ancestors, and we're going to have
I know. Imagine that. Like the Thunder is actually like the ancestors. So it's lightning storm here in LA. Yo, how you doing, man? How's life? How's everything going on with you, man?
It's good. It's actually really cool to see this lightning, man. Like, I came home from work and I just saw the lightning, and it's a little ominous, but the chances of getting struck by lightning are very low. So it's just something you don't see in LA every day, and it's been hot. It was like 95 degrees on Sunday, and I just feel good today.
Man, I was out there doing a wedding outside, like in the sticks. It was like sweating my balls. Like both my nuts were stuck together the entire time. It wasn't good. But I was actually going to go out for a walk this afternoon, and I swear to you, from my window, I saw a lightning bolt come down and strike my apartment complex. I was like, nah, I ain't going outside, bro. That's how I die. That's yeah, for real, man. So look, you do a lot, but let me ask you this question. Let's say you're at a party and someone's like, yo, Alfred, what's up? What do you do? How do you describe what exactly you do? All those slashes, all those gigs, all those jobs.
Well, it's funny. I don't like that question so much.
I know.
Question. But I don't like just putting myself in a box in terms of what do you do, because I'm just trying to figure out what I am. And at my heart, yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian. That's what I love doing. Right. But, I work at Forbes doing wrestling, and wrestling is my first love. I've been watching it my entire life. So I'm a writer, contributor to Forbes, but it's kind of a job that I kind of manufactured in some ways, almost manifested in that I just started a blog, and then I eventually kind of fell into starting to write for Bleacher Report and Forbes. And so that is part of who I am. But listen, man, I'm a dope person, I guess. You know what I mean? Just like you. Oh, you're a dope person.
No, I am not verified on Twitter, sir. So I got all the salt for you. You got the check mark, baby. Like, what?
That's what I should tell people when they ask me what I do. Well, I'm verified on Twitter. That's what
happens, man. That's absolutely all the time. But we'll get to wrestling in just a second. So let's talk about the comedy thing, man. Like, comedy is a difficult thing. Well, how'd you get the bug? Or what was your experience growing up? What made you decide to try stand-up comedy? How's it been for you so far?
It's funny because growing up, I never thought in a million years that I would be a stand-up comedian. I was always a fan of stand-up comedy. I always liked it. I always admired the people who did stand-up comedy, and I looked at them like, man, that's so cool that they do it. I never even had to want to do stand-up when I was younger and like as a kid. But then when I was working for Bleacher Report, I was doing this web series, and I just it was like a 5-minute web series where it was almost like Weekend Update meets pro wrestling, in terms of I was doing sports stories and wrestling stories, but kind of riffing on them and making jokes about them. And I didn't think they were any good. Like the first few shows, I was like, this sucks. Like I don't, I'm embarrassing myself kind of like, I don't know why they keep having me do this. So just so that I wouldn't embarrass myself, I got a book on how to write a joke, just so that they would come off like I was actually structuring a joke. And then I just learned that there are all kinds of different jokes, and I became obsessed with it. And since that day, I was just obsessed with writing jokes. So the show became much better once I actually learned that there were different ways to write a joke, different approaches, there's parallelisms, and there's all kinds of different things you can do with jokes. I just became obsessed with the art of joke writing. And then when the show ended, I kept doing it just because I loved it so much. And from there, it went from doing monologue style jokes where it's topical, where it's just kind of these one-liners about what's going on in wrestling. Yeah. Where then it's like, well, let's write jokes about sports. And then it was like, well, let's write jokes about my life. And then I thought, well, maybe I could perform these jokes. At first I wanted to sell them, but it's like, well, maybe I could perform this. And so then, the rest is just me doing stand-up.
Wait, hold on. Is that book the Rise of Late Night Television by Joe Toplin?
No. But I've heard great things about that book. It was stand-up insights eventually, but there was I think it was comedy writing for dummies or the comedy Bible.
Right.
It's a yellow book, and I read it like 3 or 4 times.
Okay, yeah. So before I get to my next question, I just want to say thank you so much for those in the chat. What's up, Flobo After Hours? Again, the award-winning show. Let's go through these questions real quick. Haywood Wong was asking about the WWE draft. We're going right to wrestling talk. He says, "What do you think about Gable Stevenson? Too soon?"
Yeah, absolutely too soon. Like, there's no other way. Who knows? Because Kurt Angle was a phenomenal athlete, and that's the comparison. And Kurt Angle took to wrestling like that. Like, day one, Kurt Angle was that guy. It wasn't any point in Kurt Angle's career where I can look at him and be like, oh, that guy's green. Like, obviously, he improved to be the greatest of all time. But when he started, he was just excellent when he started from day one. So if Gable Steveson is the next Kurt Angle, which is a unicorn, that just does not happen in wrestling. If Gable Steveson is of that level, maybe it isn't too soon, but just he's so young. He's still in college. He's still got an NCAA tournament to win. And what I think they're doing is I think this is just like a play to get headlines. I really don't think he's going to be on Raw next week wrestling a match. I don't think anytime soon they're going to put him in there to have a storyline or a feud or anything. I think they're drafting him just so that they can get that out there so that this athlete's coming to WWE so that everybody knows about it. But I really do think it's still going to be quite some time before we see him in an actual match.
Talking about being insulted. The guy's in college, but so many people were lusting over the guy. I was like, hey, he's an athlete. Shout out to JLJ Media's on the show. This is from the show that we worked on together, Mistletoe Road, season 2 coming soon. He got us all mugs for the first season cast. Props to that. And Haywood Wong has a follow-up question for you. He says, Alfred, how tall are you?
Oh, I love that question. 6'2.5", officially listed by UCLA Medical Hospital. I think I'm closer to 6'2", but they have me at 6'2.5", so I'll go with that.
Wait, hold on. Okay, 1, 6'2.5", and 2, what were you doing at USA Medical Hospital? Were you like me doing one of those like test studies or whatever?
No, I live in the South Bay, so it's not too far from me, and so that's just my home hospital that I go to. And,
the one in Torrance, right? The one off.
Close to Torrance. Close to Torrance. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was on birth control, that was the hospital I had to go to every week to get tested. Like they ran all this stuff. It's a long story. I was on birth control. True story. Learn more about that in my comedy special, 10,000 Life Coaches. I
got to check that out. So you were at the protest this weekend too, then?
I stayed home. I worked Saturday, and on Sunday I just stayed inside because it was so hot. Saturday I had heat stroke basically because I was DJing a wedding in a suit, just melting. Like it was bad, man. It was bad, and I wore the mask too. So I was like, this is how I die. JL. Okay, so the show is not about me, JLJ, but I'll tell you real quick. There is a pill they're coming out with for male birth control. It's called DMAU. I was in a clinical trial because we were paying like $2 to $3 grand, and I had no money. And basically, you take a pill, 5 pills with breakfast every day, and they measure your swimmies. Basically, they measure your swimmies over time to see how potent it is. So, yeah.
Did you have a full head of hair before you took that pill, and now it just erased it?
That's pretty much what it was. I aged 20 years, baby. I ain't gonna be no dad. Full hair.
Well, wait, let's talk about that real quick. So you took this trial pill. Did you get any side effects? Have they measured the effectiveness of it? How's that going?
Yeah. So I'm trying not to do the bit because there were some side effects. But like when you're on birth control, things do change. Like for me to eat it, I had to take it with 25 grams of fat. So the quickest way would be like a peanut butter sandwich or a Nutella sandwich. So I felt fat. So I felt fat and bloated all the time. Fatigue would come out of nowhere. I would be emotional sometimes, and I'll have like weird patches of acne. And so I will tell us to do is like, oh, that's crazy. I'll tell the girls, I'm like, so that's all you get? Like, I'm just saying, bro. Like, I'm trying to get that bag, bro. I'm just, but it's effective. It's effective, yeah. I don't know why you got on that subject. So yes, the comedy game, man. So you're in LA now. You're in the LA area now. You're doing your thing. Yeah. Like, what's that look like with the coming back? How's the comedy experience been for you?
Good. It's getting better and better. LA is slowly but surely starting to come back. I host at the Fourth Wall every Thursday, so I've been hosting every week, and it's really helped me. I've been able to go around. Vegas is kind of back open. I know the Hollywood Improv is back open. I was there last night at the open mic they do for 4 hours, really. It's LA starting to come back. It's not back to where it was obviously before, but it's really starting to resemble what it was before the pandemic.
How do you feel about that? Are you worried about like the being packed in anywhere? Do you do the outdoor shows? You kind of like, man, whatever. Like, how's been your thing with the whole coronavirus stuff?
Yeah, I don't want to say I was like reckless, but I think I just that shows how much I love comedy. Not that I ever questioned it, but the pandemic really taught me just how much I love comedy. And I was like, risking my health. In the back of my mind, I'm just like, listen, if I get it, it's for a good cause. I'm quarantined. So I was going across the country. I was going to Portland. I was going to anywhere that had any semblance of stand-up comedy to do comedy because California was just shut down. So I was in Kansas City and Texas and Portland and I never got it once to this day. Knock on wood. I took a COVID test today. Still not guilty.
My man said for a good cause. Like, it ain't a charity, brother. What are you doing? It's for a good cause, man.
Spiritually, it's a good cause spiritually.
So we got some questions here in the chat here. Haywood Wong is like, who are your comedic influences? And of course, all artists create and avoid. But if you had to pick someone, who'd you pick?
I love that question. Chris Rock is my favorite. So is Dave Chappelle. Like, I have a top 5 or 6 that changes, and I don't in no particular order. It's Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Norm Macdonald, Eddie Murphy, Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney is a huge influence on me.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of when it comes to religion, it's not like I'm an extremely religious person, but I do believe that when people go away, they kind of reincarnate through different ways, and I feel like somebody's spirit is with you when they pass away if you really, really look up to him. And I love Paul Mooney. He's just, he's a comic that I could just listen to all day in terms of just to hear what he thinks about things. And I really do think that, like, since he's passed away, I've really kind of captured the spirit of Paul Mooney in terms of you got to keep pushing that envelope in order to get to where your point is. And I just loved how fearless that guy was.
I got a question for you before that. Here's a statement from Dylan. It says, can we all show some appreciation of Alfred's cardigan? Yes, sir. Go on, brother. All your flowers, baby.
I love it. This is a handmade. I made this myself. This used to be a sweater. I took it to a tailor and I have him cut him in half. I bought some fabric, a Joann's fabric. I have him attach it, and I made this cardigan custom made.
Dude, you put the word ease on it, you can sell for $1,000 on eBay. What's been pushing the envelope for you? Like, in 2020 had its own set of challenges. Like, for you on stage today, what does it mean for Alfred to push the envelope?
Just generally, especially when I'm like working out a new bit, to not be scared to go places that I feel like will make people uncomfortable. And the crowd's always going to tell you, comedy is an ecosystem. So that's why it kind of drives me crazy, this whole, cancel culture when it comes to comedy, because we don't need cancel culture. There is an ecosystem in place to where if the joke doesn't work, you've gone too far. If people don't laugh, you've gone too far. So you kind of got to calibrate that way to do what the audience will respond to. But I like spending time in places where I feel like I've gone too far because there could be gold there. That's what Paul Mooney kind of taught me with his comedy is he would do stand-up, and this Dave Chappelle's of this same ilk, is that they'll deal with silence in order to get somewhere that they know the laugh is. So yeah. I like just when it comes to a bit, it's like I'm going to do the most extreme version of this joke, and there's a laugh somewhere here, and if not, I'll pull back a little bit, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time being uncomfortable.
Do you find yourself doing any kind of issues you would have avoided before? Have you gone like the whole F it? I was inside for a year. Y'all going to hear everything? Like, what's been like the strategy?
No, not necessarily. With COVID, it's funny because I do like, I don't do any COVID jokes. I don't have any real COVID material about this time because I feel like it's a place and time. And I really don't like doing topical material. I like doing stuff that I feel is more evergreen. I tell stories and stuff like that. But I do have jokes that are of the COVID time. Like, I have jokes about, like, the porn that I watched during COVID. And it's not necessarily I'm saying that, but I do kind of allude to that.
Did you find some top shelf pornography that you want to share with the class?
Big fan of massages, ladies and gentlemen. No, but I talked about how much stronger one arm is than the other. Like, when I went to go working out, like, I was like, man, my right arm is like 10 times stronger than my left. And so, but it's a version of that, but I really don't, and I'm not saying, shitting on people who do COVID, because I've heard some bangers of COVID bits and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just not somewhere, I don't really like doing topical stuff. Like that Girls Who's Missing right now. A lot of people have bits on that. And again, I've heard some great bits on that woman who's missing, but I feel like, is this something you're going to be working on in a year? Like, you're going to be like, hey, remember that girl was missing back in October last year?
Oh, yeah. I'm with you, man, because I know I can't say this time, this last year, but like in April and May, like you look at, first of all, Instagram is your biggest competition because you can make jokes all the time, Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
But like, remember how everyone had like hand sanitizer jokes or like wipes jokes, and then now it's kind of like, yo, bro, it's not funny no more. So yeah, it's that risk you do going too topical. So I hear you with that, with a comedic theory, you know. But
yeah, I mean, it does help your writing, though. It's because there is a benefit to writing topical because it makes you a stronger writer, and you kind of have to do it in a short period of time. So but I just kind of look at it long term that it's got a very short shelf life.
Okay, yeah, short shelf life is what it is. So you've been out there doing the thing. You love the whole comedy deal. There's someone out there saying that maybe I heard about the whole cancel culture thing. That is not really a cancel culture in comedy. Everyone who's been quote unquote canceled has somehow come back. Is that a weird statement? Do you believe in that or no?
No, ask Louis C.K. I mean, he's on his way to come back. He's filming a special, and I believe the special is going to be called Sorry. But I mean, there's definitely a cancel culture. Like, I think what people are saying when they say they don't believe in it is it's not as prominent in terms of how many people get offended by something. It's just a perception. When you see on Twitter, so many people are tweeting about something, and then it trends, and then the media is talking about it. It looks like everybody's all angry, but it's really not that in terms of people actually getting upset. There are probably people who are getting upset and want certain people canceled, but I do think that's more of the exception to the rule in terms of most people are reasonable people who just think of things from a reasonable, level-headed standpoint. And then the 5% of people who just go the craziest about it and are able to create that momentum are able to sway the public perception about something. But there is definitely cancel culture where people legitimately get canceled over this.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like if you go out of bounds, like what Don Imus did or Paula Dean did, after like Citizens, that's one thing. But like in entertainment, it seems to be a little different. Laura Snoot says, "What up, Laura, baby?" I think it's understanding there's a bigger envelope for comedy, and I have to agree. Like there's not really like it's understood. Like when you go to like if you go spar with a boxer, you get hit in the face. It's like you understood the risk once you go in. Like you don't try to offend someone, but it happens, you know. But yeah, like that's just the way it is. So you're doing a thing. I heard that you did Kill Tony a couple years ago. I know people who watch this show are big fans of that show. What's your experience like being on that show, Kill Tony?
I like Kill Tony a lot. I love that show. It's taught me so much about comedy because, Flobo, what we do is so unstructured. It's not like you can go to a school and become a comedian and you can't get this formal path or education. Every comedian has a different path to how they got to where they got and when they make it to where they get. But Kill Tony is one of those things that I love listening to because it's a form of education. Like you get to see comics who are rough around the edges. And you get to see them kind of roast the comics, but then you learn what not to do. You learn what to do. So I've learned so much about comedy just by listening to Kill Tony. And I went there like my first year. I can't even look at it. Like I saw that it's out there. Somebody put the video out there. I don't know where they got that footage from. Yeah. But it was my first year doing comedy. And from what I remember, the set did not go well until the end where I had a really pretty good joke. Like the last thing I said was good. So I got a big laugh. So the perception was that I had this good set and it really wasn't. And Bill Burr was there that night. I just remember being on stage my first year. And I was, because I move around a lot on stage and I move my arm and I touch Bill Burr. So in my mind, I was like, holy shit, I just touched Bill Burr. And I'm not much of a like starstruck guy, but it just was a weird thought. Like, oh my God. And so that's all I was thinking about while I was on stage. Like, and it kind of threw me off. And it's a 1 minute of comedy in your first year is so intense. So it was a fun experience. It was just wild and kind of awkward, but I'm glad I did it. And I know they're in Austin, Texas now. And I went to Austin and next time I go, I'm going to, try to get on that show.
It's like touching Bill Burr's like, oh, look at that. Get touched.
That guy touching me.
Yes. So what's the comedy tour like? The last question about this. The comedy tour, the 2021, 2022, where are you going in the next couple of weeks?
So I like going to San Diego. So I'm going to go to San Diego on the 14th. I've got a show, but right now is the beginning of October. So I'm kind of filling out my calendar right now. Recently I was in Portland a couple months ago. I was in Texas recently. Vegas. I was in Vegas a couple of weeks ago. That was a lot of fun. Doing the World Series of Comedy and a couple of shows out there. So I'm going to do a lot of shows around town here, but I'm looking, it's coming up in festival season. So I've been applying to a lot of festivals. So 2022, I'm looking to go to South Dakota. They're going to have the Snow Jam out there. And so hopefully I'll be able to get into that. There's what was the other festival that I applied to? Oh, St. Louis Obispo. That's just right here in California.
Oh, Slow Festival,
Um,
yeah.
well, I actually just went to San Luis Obispo to do a show in a brewery. It was a lot of fun a couple weeks ago.
Slow's a cool town. It's a real cool town. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yo, how do you afford that shit, man? Give some pro tips, baby. Because I can rack up. Those miles ain't cheap. Like, what?
Take the bus, okay? I take a lot of buses.
Fair enough.
Especially when I'm going, if I'm out on the West Coast, Arizona even, if I'm out on the West Coast, whether it's Arizona, whether it's San Diego, whether it's Las Vegas, I'm taking the bus, you know? And, you know, when I'm on the bus, I don't see, it does get uncomfortable after several hours, but, you know, I really do pass the time because, you know, you've got your laptop, you can watch things. I write a lot when I'm on the bus. You know, you kind of develop habits. So one of the reasons I like being on the bus is I know it's going to trigger the thing in my brain, like, oh, whenever you're on a bus, you got to write, or on a plane, you know. But usually, you know, typically the bus, Southwest is great. I try to book stuff way in advance. A pro tip is to book things like try to see to the future in terms of where you want to go, because tickets can be very cheap on Southwest, and there's all kinds of specials that they have. If you book something, you know, even 2 months in advance or whatnot, you'll be able to go out there. But, you know, I try to save, and I try to pick my spots in terms of where I go, because that does add up if you're doing it too much.
This man, I hear you got the plan laid out. Chrissy Hedden wants to know what your Instagram handle is, because this is nasty. Your Twitter handle. What's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram handle is just basic. It's just at AKONUWA.
Ah, okay. So you have two. I like it. I can't get mad. I'm the same way. Flobito on Instagram, Flobo Boyce on Twitter. I ain't mad with you. And you're getting praised in the chat for doing your thing. Yeah, busting train. All right. Just saying he grinded. I'm not. All right, JLJ. I ain't mad. I ain't jealous. But moving on, man. One of the cool things you mentioned at the top of the hour that you are a huge wrestling fan. I know we'll get into the minutiae of wrestling things, but the reason why I hit you up is because you did this video where you pretended to be doing like the weather. And you had mentioned that AEW is just somehow slacking and lacking on representation in the professional wrestling, right? Let's talk about that. First things first. Has anyone hit you with that? Hey, you can't be saying that with AEW, bro.
Oh, have they ever? Like that? You know, the feedback I've gotten has been mostly positive, a lot of positive, you know, and I've, you know, developed a lot of really good connections, yourself included, in terms of people who have reached out. And it really warms my heart that there is a Black wrestling media now, in terms of Black people who love wrestling, who I can connect with, who follow it, who think about wrestling from a different perspective than the way it's been covered for decades. So that was a really cool thing of me doing this video and it kind of reaching different people. Yeah. But yes, there is another side of that with the negativity, in terms of, you know, my DMs are wide open. Like anybody can go in there and jump in my DMs and say whatever. And so that's pretty crazy.
That's how I booked you. That's why I was like, yo, will be my show, bro?
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. But I've gotten some, you know, negative stuff that way, and a lot of AEW hardcores, and even people, I don't want to just put them into that box. There are people who are reasonable, who have kind of pushed back on the things I've said and have had counterpoints that I like conversing with as well. I consider my audience, you know, I'm trying to build this audience on YouTube. My audience, and this goes for everybody, yourself too, Flobo, people's audience, when people talk about their audience, it's not just the people who agree with you. It's not just your fans. It's people who want to engage with you over and over. There are people who are in my comment section week after week after week who disagree with me and say, oh, this isn't right. That's part of my audience, you know, and that's something that I have to be beholden to as well, in terms of them kind of getting me to think of things in another way, because sometimes somebody will bring up a point that I'm like, I never thought about it that way.
Sure. So this, for those of you who aren't into the wrestling arts and sciences, so AEW is a newer promotion. It's been around a couple of years, and wrestling in general has never been that great when it came to anyone of a minority, like the way they portray characters. But in AEW, there are Black talent, there are Latin talent, but it just seems that either they're all heels or they never featured in major storylines. And I felt that way, but I felt weird saying it because everyone feels that wrestling is purely merit. Well, this guy was in Japan. This guy was with Omega. But, I mean, if you think about it, as a kid, I liked The Rock because he was brown like me. Also like the movie Aladdin because Aladdin was brown like me and he married a princess, plus besides the point. But what made you go, you know what, this is something I need to say? You could have been kept it in your head. You could have made a joke about it on stage, but you said, no, I'm going to really delve deep into this.
Yeah, well, I've had this channel, the Pro Wrestling Bits YouTube channel, and it's doing very well, and I really have fun doing it and just doing these kind of commentaries on all kinds of things when it comes to wrestling. And this is something that I was kind of thinking for a little bit. In a couple of videos before that, I was making just a comment here and there about, boy, AEW sure is kind of white. And then I was on Twitter, and there were these rumors about Adam Cole coming to AEW. Adam Cole is this wrestler. Adam Cole, baby, yes. He was in NXT with WWE by and large. And there are rumors that he's going to AEW. He's this very talented wrestler. He's white. And so there's all this conjecture on Twitter. Adam Cole's coming to AEW. And I saw somebody put the Miami Heat, and LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. It showed the Heat. Like, oh, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and Adam Cole are going to be just like this. And I'm thinking, like, no. Like, they're not going to be like these brothers. Like, that. You're looking for the baseball analogy. Like, that's not what it's going to be like. And that just kind of got the wheels turning. Like, boy, there are a lot of white top stars. Like, AEW does not really book black people to be at that position. Like, Adam Cole just showed up in AEW. Yeah, like the speculation said, and on day one he was a superstar because he is a superstar. But AEW tends to take a lot of these talents, like a CM Punk, a Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, and Adam Cole, Kenny Omega, a lot of these guys, and they just shoot to the moon almost immediately. MJF, and so I start thinking, like, look at all of these stars that they're able to just cultivate into these big stars. They spend all these resources getting mainstream music. And the more the wheels turned in my mind, I was like, they do not do this for black people. And they're getting a free pass. Like, there's a perception in the wrestling world that AEW is this diversity company that, oh, we're the new progressive, cool, hip wrestling company. It's like, no, you guys are every bit as white as WWE was in the 60s.
Right. Oh, wow. That's I want to get a quote here from our mutual friend, Jack Farmer. He says, the audience that disagrees is always loud in the audience that agrees. And I have to agree with him. But again, the question is this, like, we look at WWE, and I remember when I was a kid, and even to this day, when someone who's signed to be a wrestler, you have to have a character that people in the rafters can see, especially for black characters. Either if you're a heel, you're like a thug or a gangster or a pimp. If you are a face or a good guy, it's a pure athlete. Like, until Bianca brought her own thing, I was like, what a pure athlete. I feel like AEW does that, but I think more egregiously, like, you don't get the momentum. You don't see a workhorse every week to latch onto. I feel like you get a Scorpio Sky, maybe, 2 appearances, and that's it. I mean, is that an easy fix? Is there something underneath? Like, what do you think the real root of the problem could be?
Yeah, that's a great point that you made, because there is very sporadic. And shout out to Jack Farmer, by the way, part of the Wrestling Inc. family, does a great job on Monday nights with the Raw podcast. Jack Farmer, great to see you here. But the thing is, just to your point, it seems like these black talent, especially when they're trying to get them going, they just have them face one of these top stars, like they did it with CM Punk and Will Hobbs. They did it with Red Velvet when she put over Britt Baker. They did it with Lee Johnson when he put over Malachi Black, and then you never saw them again. And then they just kind of went away. And the way they present these black talent is very one-dimensional. I know where Britt Baker's from. I know Britt Baker's hometown. She's a hero and a god in Pittsburgh. I know Bryan Danielson's hometown. I know everything about Jungle. I know who Jungle Boy's dad is. I know
they don't shut up about his dad. They do not shut up about his poor dad.
I don't know who Will Hobbs' daddy is. You know what I'm saying? Like, where Will Hobbs is from. I don't know where Lee Johnson is from. Like, I actually do, because I did the Black Wrestler of the Month. It was Lee Johnson, and I did all this research on him. But they do not create 3-dimensional characters with these black wrestlers. And this is something they should know how to do. It's not that much different. Like, I don't want to go, I don't see color or anything like that, but because that's not the point I'm making right now. The point I'm making is you're a booker. You're booking human beings. If you see potential in somebody and you want them to be a star, these bookers know exactly what to do. This is a fake sport. So you can manipulate these wrestlers to make sure that they're cutting the promos or in a certain space or having certain matches. Dante Martin, in 1 minute and 21 seconds, they just let him run wild. They play to his strength. The guy came off as a superstar, and then you didn't see him for 3 weeks. If they really were invested in him, they would have followed up the next week and the next week and the next week.
What's that? People say that, look, man, wrestling is they provide, I'm not a wrestling company, but they provide what the people want. I'm not trying to say that people are racist, but let's say these characters, these Adam Cole, these CM Punk, are just that hot right now that just by the nature of the business, they're not filtering this time. Maybe it's just an oopsie daisy.
Yeah, they are providing what the people want. And that's another part of this is AEW leans into that internet wrestling community culture and that indie style wrestling culture and people who are over in Ring of Honor like 10 to 15 years ago. And that was a very, white type of culture in terms of the guys who got over in the indies and just basically wrestling in general, the industry, because it's not just AEW we're going to blame. Obviously, WWE has its own ugly history, but plenty of wrestling promotions do. And so it's created this culture where Black people in wrestling to this day are seen as like, kind of less than, and can they really draw, and kind of second class and bit players in the world of wrestling. And so that's slowly but surely changing. But you see that residual effect in AEW, to where a lot of the people who are able to come in and be stars on day one that they just give the moon to and trust, even the unknowns who weren't stars before AEW, are white individuals, because I still do feel that they're a little gun shy when it comes to Black talent, and it shouldn't be like that. Because when the sports are real, even if it's a sport like tennis, they'll create a Serena Williams, you know what I mean? And she'll become a superstar. Even golf has Tiger Woods. When the sports are real, it's one Black superstar after another. But in AEW now, when it's fake, it's like, well, how do we create these Black? How do we find a talented Black athlete? It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Okay, so this is a discussion happening. There's so many Negroes. Jack Farber says, Sammy and Lucha Brothers, Ricky Starks aren't white, but they get the point that's being made here, and they aren't wrong. And he also had issues with women's division as well. But then Dylan Matthews says, can you classify Ricky Starks as a champion? That belt's a prop. That means absolutely nothing. So the question I have for you then is, like, what would seem to be an actual step in the right direction? What would be fan service or lip service if they were to have a Black talent that went shot to the moon?
Well, okay, and I want to address the thing that Jack Farmer says in terms of, the different, whether it's Latino, whether it's Japanese people, and all these different, because I do get that sometimes in terms when I'm kind of advocating for Black people or just talking about these issues. Yeah. Some people will push back with, well, look at these other different races. The Latinos will be fine. Like, there was never a question in my mind that Latino people wouldn't get over in AEW, because there are plenty of prominent Latino organizations. There's AAA, which AEW works with. The Lucha Brothers. There's New Japan Pro Wrestling, the CMLL. There's All Japan. There's DDT. There's all these wrestling promotions that are predominantly Japanese. What is the big Black wrestling promotion? There are none. So certain people are going to need this advocacy and attention more than others. Yeah. Like, yes, it'd be cool. It's cool that Sammy Guevara is getting over. He'll be fine. Okay, the Latinos and stuff like that, all these different races, a lot of them will be just fine. Black people, not so much. We need to make a little bit. It's always been like this in America. We need to make a little noise and sing for our supper, because we were brought here against our will. So it kind of goes back to our ancestors. And now, what was the question that you asked?
Well, I have another question there. I'll get to that other one first. So for those of you who aren't familiar with wrestling promotions and styles, if you're a Latino wrestler, there's usually two big powerhouse styles, like Lucha Libre out of Mexico, and then the Caribbean style out of Puerto Rico. The Japanese wrestling has different Japanese promotions. Black people together don't really have like a style to go with. My question was, if they got someone to be a hero, to be a champion, would that really be someone to move the needle, or would that be seen as lip service? Would that be seen as just doing it out of spite at this point?
If they got one person, I don't think that would be, it just depends on how it's presented. And I think idealistically, because this isn't something that's going to end with, okay, you people got your world champion. Are you happy now? Like Scorpio Sky wins the title. Are you happy now? This is not an are you happy now situation. Like, I was doing the same thing with WWE when I felt that they weren't doing right by Black people, when I felt that WWE was kind of booking Black people to be stereotypes too much. I felt that it wasn't, something, there was a lot of missed opportunities. When Kofi Kingston, who was a WWE wrestler who finally became WWE champion, first African-born WWE champion, the first Black WWE champion, they credit The Rock. Okay, he's a diversity cheat code, but The Rock is one of us. Okay,
why are the quotes? He is African. He's
African-born. What they're really saying is he's the first Black WWE champion, but they can't say that because The Rock technically is the first Black WWE champion, and that is true. But he was promoted as a Samoan athlete. He was not promoted as a Black guy in WWE. They really celebrated his Samoan culture, and this is WWE and how they presented The Rock. This is nothing against The Rock.
Yeah, but not taking away with
really the first Black man in terms of how WWE presented him to become champion. And I got a lot of, okay, see, they did it. Okay, so now you don't have to complain anymore. No. I want the same spectrum of Blackness in WWE or AEW that they have a spectrum of whiteness. Like, I want it to be normalized, and that's where WWE is right now, where Bobby Lashley won the title, and it's like, oh, of course he did. And then it went from Bobby Lashley to Big E, and so now there's a normalization process of Black people winning the championship because they're over, because they cultivated them into three-dimensional stars. So I want to see several Black wrestlers being cultivated into three-dimensional stars in AEW. Before I really feel like this is actually working in terms of their promise of diversity.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, for those of you that know, I watch the wrestling show like Draped in Gold and MacMania. I'm a character person first, even over the actual moves and holds, even actual storylines. I'm a character person first. So to me, the AEW has talent because Powerhouse Hobbs is a beast, but for me, I want someone with likes, desires, a personality, someone that makes me think, oh, he would do this in this situation. But you got yourself some great discussion in the chat, man. I didn't think it would be this hot here. But Greg said, seeing a superstar black player in NHL, referring to PK Subban, it sounded like seeing like a successful white running back in the NFL. Exciting to see just because people present it to you is so rare, even though there are a lot of really good people out there. And Lars says, the reality is it's probably going to be wrong at the start, no matter what. Some will always be able to find an issue with it, just kind of have that stage out of the way. So I get to almost like a proving ground, testing ground type of thing. I totally understand.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, as a kid though, like for example, when I'm in a comic book, so you can tell I have the DC comic line there. And my favorite comic book character now is Green Lantern John Stewart. But when I was a kid, I was a Superman person, and I didn't see color. Superman was Superman. When you were a kid, though, did you gravitate towards superstars of color, or did you kind of like no, you like characters? What was your favorites growing up? How did that like work for you?
I was a huge Batman guy, it's because of what was presented to me. Like the comic book superheroes in the mainstream were, like you said, the Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. So I was really into Batman, really into Spider-Man, loved Spider-Man. And then it's funny because then the Justice League cartoon came on, and then Green Lantern was black. Green Lantern, the John Stewart.
They had to make him black, but yes.
Yeah. And
Justice League was always white, and that's why. Sorry, I'm going off the subject here. That's why they added Cyborg randomly. Like, oh, he's a Teen Titan. Why is he Justice League? Sorry, continue.
No, and also another favorite Superman hero of mine is Blake Man, who's Damon Wayans. I saw that movie when I was a kid, and I know he's not of the DC or Marvel universe, but I freaking love Blake Man. Blake Man was a great movie when I was a kid. But when I saw Green Lantern, it was like, wow, this is a black comic book character. It just triggered that thing in me, like, holy shit, like, where's this been? And that's when you start to go looking for it.
Yeah, I hear you. But as a kid in wrestling, were you a fan of black wrestlers then, or did you like just say, hey, look, I have my favorites?
Oh no, I definitely So I was a Hulkamaniac when I was really young. I loved Sting and the Ultimate Warrior. I was really into. Hulk Hogan was over in the '80s, man. When you were a kid, we couldn't have predicted what came next. But I was a big Hulkamaniac when I was a kid. Shawn Michaels is actually my favorite wrestler of all time. But as I got a little older, when they started pushing Ahmed Johnson, who was this black wrestler, I really got into that. And he really connected with me on a visceral level to where when he won, I felt like a member of my family had won. And the same thing with Harlem Heat, which is my favorite tag team of all time. In top 5, definitely, because I love Legion of Doom and whatnot. But Harlem Heat, I absolutely loved and it's one of those things you just don't know till you know, because you watch wrestling and they've got all these different characters who they push to you until you're a kid. And so you just kind of gobble it up if you love wrestling. And you're like Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage and this and that and the other. And then you see like a glitch in the Matrix, like a Booker T come along, and you're just like, whoa. And then it kind of unlocks something within you to where you do want to support more black wrestlers. And so, Booker T's an all-time favorite of mine, The Rock, obviously. But, it just kind of evolved over time.
So you're a comedian. You love the wrestling. You got to be inundated with comparisons to Ron Funches, man. So the question I got for you, are you going to go pick up the boots and get in the ring and do a little collar and elbow?
No, I'm not. Ron Funches is funny. I have a shirt that I wear. It's a very bright colored shirt. And that's the only time I get compared to Ron Funches is when I'm wearing this bright, like warm and fuzzy shirt with a teddy bear. Like, oh, look, it's Ron Funches over here. I have to pick my spots when I'm wearing this shirt. But Ron, I'm a big fan of his comedy, too. I think he's hilarious. He's got this bit about The Undertaker that's very funny. But no, I don't have any desires to go in and become like an actual wrestler. I just respect what they do a lot. And when I was younger, that's something that I really did consider doing. When I was 13, what I wanted to do for a living was be a wrestler. That's why I started working out. I just started working out, and I still work out to this day. But my impetus for working out when I started lifting weights was I'm going to get big and I'm going to be a wrestler.
Okay, question. What was your gimmick then? What was the gimmick you made up back then? What were you going to call yourself?
I love that. What was my gimmick? I was the X-Man.
I love it.
The X-Man Xavier Jackson. That was the gimmick. And it wasn't really a gimmick. It was just I was kind of like ripping off The Rock. I was going to be this arrogant, cocky kind of black guy who's like a free agent, high price. It really was a precursor to MVP.
That's creative. That's a ripoff.
What MVP ended up doing, where MVP was this free agent wrestler, that was kind of my thinking. Is like, I want to be promoted as like an athlete who like is a coveted free agent.
Yeah, I'm freaking out here. You warm my heart. So at my former employer, I literally went to the head of the network and I said I wanted to do a video that said MVP was the most underrated character of all time. Because you think about it, once the idea of him being signed to SmackDown and getting the pyro and the tunnel, like superstars have been changed. Like, you're not just not the human circus anymore. You're athletes. There's a WWE draft this weekend. People go out there and do appearances. Like, MVP as a character, and he's still paying off dividends today. Is this one of those things that really like moved the needle for me personally? And the cornrows, baby. He held on those cornrows forever. I was so inspired. 10 years on, he's still making it tight. It was great. It was great.
It's good. And I love his ring gear. I was an apologist for his ring gear, where people said he looked like a Power Ranger, or they hated it. And even he has said that originally when they gave him that ring gear and he had the sleeves and the gloves, and he didn't like it. But I loved that ring gear. And as good as MVP is, as great as he was and still is, I still feel like they kind of missed the boat on it, because I felt like his ceiling was like a top star perennially, like what Randy Orton was. Like, that's what I intended to see for MVP.
Well, he was literally punished.
He had a great career.
He was literally punished. The rumor goes he was getting a drug test, and of course back then you had to like drop trow, and he was like, "Oh, you get paid to look at my." Yeah. And then he went a losing streak for an entire year, but that's a whole.
That was it for him. His last match too, they made him lose in his hometown of Miami. I mean, Miami loves themselves from MVP, and they had him lose in Miami, and then then he was done. And I always had a bad taste in my mouth about that.
Oh, absolutely. But back to our friend Jack Farmer. He says, as a kid, I always project myself into my favorite wrestlers. The wrestling fan base is diverse, and that diversity should be represented in the characters on TV so the fan base can project themselves. I'm agreeing with that. And Kirk says, I'm digging Alfred's goatee, no lie. I aspire to have one just like that one day as a young guy. Okay.
I never thought it could happen, but during the pandemic, it actually started growing. And I was like, I'm just going to let it. I'm not going outside or anything. I was always very clean shaven and very particular about it. And I always just assumed it just really couldn't grow, because I tried one time and it just looked awful. And then it just kind of grew out, and I just let it happen.
Yeah, I know, man. I grew a beard for two reasons. One, I was like, when I get hired for a job, I will shave it. And two, I kept getting confused for Cory Booker. So I grew my beard out, but then I was like, I'm fine with it. It's fine. I
grew my beard out so I could look less like Michael Strahan.
Oh, I see it now. I'm sorry. Oh, God, that was rude. I apologize. Haywood says, show that match. Ron Fletcher's Alfred versus Evan T. Mac. Now that is money. All that chocolate. Bring them both on. Let's do it. Book this. Just real quick, man. What's the favorite match you've seen live?
Oh, I love that. WrestleMania 31, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns in San Jose or Santa Clara. It was in Levi's Stadium.
Yes,
that was an amazing match, because this was the peak of when they were trying to get Roman Reigns over as his babyface. In 2015, that's where I think that was the peak of the hatred of Roman Reigns in terms of people kind of pushing back. He did have his supporters, but the people, there were a lot of people who just couldn't stand him. And that culminated in a stadium filled with people who were just, booing the crap out of Roman Reigns and absolutely loving Brock Lesnar. And I remember I was there covering it as a member of the media, and, you kind of got to hit there and kind of type about the matches that are going on. I was like, you know what? I'm putting my laptop down. I'm going into that stadium. I want to feel this. And I went in there, and it's as close to like a big fight. Like, when you see like the Muhammad Ali Rumble in the Jungles, I watched those. They just had this Muhammad Ali documentary. You got to check the Ken Burns documentary. And you see him in like Rumble in the Jungle and stuff like that. And it's like, God, I wish I would have been there. This feels like as close as I'll ever get to something like that, because it's just stadium filled with 50, 60,000 people. And you just see every one of them is into this match. And it was a great match too. And a great finish.
Absolutely. I think that was like the first non-numbered WrestleMania, but that was like the new standard for shows. Haywood Wong has a quick question for you about Xia Li. Last time we saw her in NXT, she basically injured, quote unquote, Mercedes Martinez. I thought she was done, but she got promoted to SmackDown today. Actually, thoughts about that?
I know WWE's thirsty for a Chinese superstar. And this is what I love about WWE. And you could call it like opportunistic, but I think it's well intended, because they look at a lot of these different demographics where we want a big Chinese star, we want a big Hispanic star, because when Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero were doing that feud, they did some of the best numbers in their history in terms of a lot of these California and Latino markets and overall. And so they want to captivate on these different cultures and markets with these different stars. And I think they see that in Xia Li. So we'll see, because, Kyrie's saying they didn't do enough with her, I don't think. And I have trouble believing they will with Xia Li, because I just think this model of WWE and the way that they build stars is broken. And it's even more so that when it comes to minorities, although they have done a really good job booking like the New Day, Big E, Bobby Lashley, Bianca Belair, they've done a better job. But if you look at like a Xia Li coming in from NXT, I mean, I hope that she catches on, because I loved Xia Li. If you saw me on those Wrestling Inc. podcasts, I was singing her praises. I just loved this whole gimmick that she was doing.
There's certain superstars where I like to, dust the shoulders off and be like, yo, I caught them. I was a fan of them when they started. Pete Dunne, I saw them at PWG. Xia Li was fresh on that Mae Young Classic. By the way, bring that Mae Young Classic back. Queen's Crown's great. I want Mae Young, y'all. So I want to do very, very well. That's for sure. And Shotzi Blackheart, too. She seems like a fun person. All about that. So if you've seen WrestleMania 31 live, what's one thing you want to do? Like, what other shows you want to check out? Like things you haven't done. Like, if you want to check out like a Full Gear live. Is there anything left on your wrestling bucket list?
I've actually never been to an AEW show, so I'm kind of holding out hope that they come out to California sooner than later. But I know they do Double or Nothing in Vegas, so next year I'll definitely. I was planning on going to Double or Nothing this past year, but I think that might have been a COVID thing. But I want to go to Double or Nothing, so it'd be great to go to an AEW show. It'd be great to go to the Tokyo Dome. I mean, that's just one of those kind of religious experience. We have the Comedy Store and comedy, and I wouldn't say the Tokyo Dome is like Comedy Store for wrestling, but it is one of those venues that is like revered, almost like church of wrestling, where I would want to see a show in the Tokyo Dome. I think that'd be a cool bucket list thing to go out to Japan and check that out.
I feel like when it comes to wrestling, it's like the Tokyo Dome and MSG are like the two hollow grounds, like you do work a main event at MSG. Even when a New Japan had the G1 Climax, not the G1 Climax, the American tournament in MSG, I was like, oh, whoa, it's in New York. This is a big deal. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm with that. But yo, I can't believe we're almost out of time here. Hanging with Alfred, man. If you got a question for him, let me know in that chat below. But are you down to play a game, good sir?
Yes, let's play a game.
All right, this one is called The Last Time. I'm going to ask you some questions, but the last things you did, you let me know what those are. Kind of like a lightning round, you know what I'm saying?
I love it.
Cool. Who was the last concert you saw?
Oh, that's a great question. The last concert, it was, you know what? It was Kanye West in Inglewood. And I don't go to too many concerts, but it was like right before he melted down and just kind of really got away from him in terms of, how we.
Was that 808?
No, that was Life of Pablo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was Life of Pablo. It was like 2 days because he went to Inglewood and he just put on an amazing show. I mean, it was a tour where he got on the stage and he was floating around the arena. It was at the Forum. And it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And then it's funny because I was telling my friends about it because he was going to be in Sacramento. And I'm from Chico, which is an hour from Sacramento. So I'm telling my buddies, like, you guys got to check out this Kanye concert. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm putting it over. It was like a religious awakening and this, that, and the other. And so he goes to Sacramento. He does 2 songs. He goes on a rant. He throws the microphone away and he walks out.
Yeah.
My buddies are like, what the hell did you tell me to go to that show for?
Damn, you got rope-a-doped. No refunds. Well, what's the last movie you saw in theaters, my friend?
Well, it wasn't too long ago. Was it? Oh, actually, no, it was. It was The Invisible Man. And then I'm going to say there was another one that it was Quiet Place 2. I saw Quiet Place 2 in theaters. Really good. I love those Quiet Place movies. I hope there's like a 3 and 4 and 5. I just love that dynamic that it just has to be quiet. And it's funny because when I watched A Quiet Place 1, it was quiet in the theater and somebody's phone went off. And everybody in the theater was like, no! But it was a phone. It wasn't actually because Quiet Place, when you make a noise, the monsters come out. So the characters have to be quiet. So that was fun. And then The Quiet Place 2, I thought it was a really good sequel, really strong sequel.
That's probably someone who's trolling y'all. Like, I got you. What's the last thing you texted?
Oh, what is I don't want to get in trouble with anybody here.
You were like, I'm sorry, I got to go to this dumbass podcast at 10 o'clock.
Last week, probably something to. What is the last thing I take? Maybe I can take a look here. Let me.
This is live television, y'all. This is live broadcast.
I don't want to get caught for
This is Alfred's fingers live on What's Up Flobo.
I text. Let's say I texted my brother. So football was yesterday, and my fantasy team was not doing too well, so I vented to my brother.
Oh, okay.
Mike Williams screwed me over today too.
I got a couple more for you. The last time you booked a vacation, where'd you go?
I guess you could. I went to Portland, Oregon to do stand-up comedy. I'm sorry. I went to Portland. I treated that like a vacation. I was there for a week.
Oh, wow.
That was very interesting. I didn't know how white Portland was. I mean, I always heard things, but I thought there was going to be more like, black pockets and stuff like that. And I was able to find them, but I went there for a week just to be somewhere different. And I really didn't spend that much time around people. I did comedy at night and stuff like that, but I was out in like their gardens and they had all this. They have a really cool scene out there. And it was pretty fun being out there for a week or so. So I guess that would be the last vacation. And then I went to Liberia, but that was like a few years ago.
Oh yeah, the motherland. How was that, man?
Loved it. I love Liberia. Like, I want to go there again, but it's kind of in unstable condition right now because they elected a soccer player to be their president, so it's not in the best shape right now. But it's on its way back, and when it comes back, I want to go back to the motherland. Was
he a good soccer player at least?
I mean, it's great. Sorry, good enough to be president, that's for sure.
Good enough to be president. That's the way it should be. Some guy in Liberia is watching now like, hey! Okay, so what's the last show you checked out on Netflix, my friend?
Last show? Definitely the Michael Jordan documentary. I'm obsessed with it. I watch it all the time. The Michael Jordan documentary is great. But another show that I watched on Netflix was Dark Side of the 90s.
Yeah. So Vice too. Yeah.
I didn't know because there's Dark Side of the Ring on Vice, so I watch a lot of that. So I think it might have, my Netflix got smart to that. So it started. I didn't know Dark Side was a whole thing. That they had Dark Side of football. I saw that was really good. Yeah, but Dark Side of the 90s is wild because I grew up in the 90s. They showed all this stuff about how the 90s kind of had a really big impact on the kind of social media and the celebrity worshiping we're doing now. Really, it was kind of it's been kind of going on for a while now, but the 90s really exploded that with like Jerry Springer and all that shock TV that they were doing. And there's a lot of great episodes of Dark Side of the 90s. I really recommend that.
It's funny you mentioned The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, because I watched it, but I watched it last summer, and I play this game. I'm really bad at it. It's called Rocket League. And I'm trying to get good at this fucking frustrating game. And I had the documentary playing when I was ranking up for the first time. So the first time I became an above average player, like a diamond level. I was like, yeah, Jordan, I feel you, Jordan. I know how it is to win. It was the most stupidest, nerdiest thing ever. I got two more. I got two more for you. When was the last time a celebrity retweeted you?
A celebrity did what? Retweeted me?
A celebrity retweeted you.
Let's see. It might have been Cody's retweeted me a few times, but that hasn't happened in a while because I'm not being very friendly to his company. So I think it was Cody. What did another celebrity retweet? Yeah, I think it was Cody. I don't even remember what it is I said. I might have said something about there's this guy Warhorse who they had on, and I was talking about how much I liked him. But yeah, I think it was Cody Rhodes, who's a wrestler. He's on a show called Road to the Top on TNT, and he's also a prominent wrestler in AEW, one of their founding fathers.
Yeah, Cody Rhodes.
On Twitter too. We're good. Cody gets it.
Cody as a character is definitely complex, but I will give him credit. He's able to follow people that disagree with him. Like most people don't do that, so I give him credit for that. And last one here. Last time you saw a sporting event live.
Sporting event live, was it? Well, can I can't count wrestling. I think it was a Clippers game. I think it might have been Clippers game. No. It wasn't a Clippers game. Well, I go to a lot of Clippers games, especially pre-pandemic, but it was probably a football game. The Packers and the Rams. There was in Los Angeles Coliseum a couple of years ago. The Packers versus the Rams. I went to that live, and it was funny because it was like 70% Packers fans, because anytime, LA does not, the Chargers and the Rams are not, LA does not feel like they really embrace them. The Raiders are really the biggest team in LA.
The Raiders and Trojans, basically.
Yeah. So they were really cheering for the Packers. So anytime, because it was a home game, quote unquote, for the Rams. And anytime they'd say, okay, everybody quiet, the Rams are on offense, the place is going crazy with Packer fans. And when the Packers would score, everybody's going nuts. So that was a fun game.
I never understood that. I'm not a huge football person, but like no one in LA was like, we need our teams back. But they gave them 2. And they're now sharing the same venue, and it's just crap. It's just garbage.
Yeah. We just saw it tonight on Monday Night Football where the Raiders came to play the Chargers, and that was a Raiders home game.
Oh, absolutely. The Raiders were a big deal. LA Raiders, silver and black. People were still wearing their jerseys. And now I see guys driving out to Vegas because it's Vegas, obviously, to watch the Raiders play. It's crazy, man. It's nuts. But that does it for that. But Alfred, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Wassup Flobo After Hours. A lot of fun getting your perspective, seeing a bit of your background, the comedy thing. Now, if you got some new fans here in the chat, how can they engage with you? How can they follow you? How can they say, oh my gosh, I disagree with you?
Shout out to the chat too. This has been a lot of fun, Flobo. We got to do this again. Follow me on Twitter at This Is Nasty, Instagram at AKONUWA. I'm on Forbes, so just go on Forbes and look up Alfred Konuwa. And then, of course, I have my pro wrestling channel on YouTube called Pro Wrestling Bits. Really growing, and I'm having a lot of fun doing these videos. And I want you guys to see these videos and see what you think. If you agree with it, if you disagree with it, they always seem to get a lot of reaction in terms of the things that I choose to talk about and the people who I started to reach. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
Wait, why is it This Is Nasty? Like, what is that referring to?
Okay, so when I started writing, I had a blog called BigNasty.com, and and then when I went to Bleacher Report, that was like, because when I started blogging, it was this era where, for whatever reason, bloggers felt they had to be anonymous. They never used their real names. Every blogger had like a nickname, so I didn't use my real name. I just used Big Nasty, which was a name that I had like playing rugby there. I had a coach who was Australian. He started calling me Big Nasty because I would, break tackles with it. I don't know.
Dylan's also Australian. They got me into rugby too, the poor guy. Let's go Roosters. Up these. All right.
Hell yeah. Oh, you know what? I went to a rugby game. That might be the last game. I went to a rugby game at the LA Coliseum. The Guiltinis. Shout out to the Guiltinis. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I forgot there's like, for you guys who don't know, in the United States, there's a rugby league. And there's 2 teams named after drinks. There's like the Gilronis and the Guiltinis. And they have so dumb. We do things so wrong in this country. Yeah. But I'm get out of here, man. You got to follow This Is Nasty all over that Twitter sphere. Wassup Flobo After Hours. We'll be back here next week with brand new content. Alfred, last final words to tell the fans.
You know what, you guys? This has been a lot of fun. Support Black wrestling. Support this channel. And just be funny. Let's just be funny. When it comes to comedy, give comedians the benefit of the doubt. They're not trying to hurt anybody. We're all just trying to be funny. So if a joke bombs, don't cancel us because a joke bombing is punishment enough.
Yeah, don't boo us. Just give us the boring chat. See you guys next week.